Hello, everyone. Tonight we are lying on the edge of a forgotten island beach somewhere far from your streetlights, far from your apartment walls, far from anything that moves faster than a lazy gust of wind. The moon above is huge and pale like a bleached fossil dragging its silver fingertips across black waves. You've just woken up, though you're not sure you were ever truly asleep, and the sand beneath your palms is oddly warm, like it remembers fire or something older. There's a sound. Not crashing surf, not seagulls, not even wind. Just something dragging itself across sand slow and certain, like it knows it's been doing this longer than mammals have walked. You squint and spot the outline of a massive dome, not a rock, not a dune, but a living creature older than almost anything you've ever met. It turns slowly, silently, and disappears into the trees. You are not in charge here. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I'm serious. I read every single one. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle toward the tree line, dragging your feet through thick sand that feels more like time than terrain. Palms loom above you. And that turtle the size of a coffee table flipped upside down and forgotten by giants is just gone. There's no sound, no rustle, no movement. Just the slow, wet hush of leaf against leaf. This place, you realize, doesn't move quickly for anyone, including you. Historians still debate whether these turtles, many over 500 pounds and some stretching nearly 6 feet long, should be called survivors or opportunists. Their ancestors once lived alongside megalania lizards and terror birds, but here they lived slow and long. Why? Because their enemies died. A long time ago, most of the world's large predators were wiped out. Climate chaos, comet tantrums, tectonic squabbles, pick your apocalyptic flavor. But on islands like this, nothing rushed in to fill the void. And so the turtles, blessed with bulk and a laughably small metabolic rate, grew. And grew. And waited. Sea giantism on islands is a real thing. There's even a word for it: insular gigantism. When predators vanish, the slow and heavy suddenly get promoted. That's why the giant tortoises of Aldabra, Galapagos, and this island, which we're not going to name because you don't get to Google your way out of mystery, lived like royalty. They became armored lawnmowers with no bills to pay and no one to impress. You hear a hiss, not aggressive, more like a tired exhale, and turn to see another turtle, this one older, its shell deeply grooved like someone spent centuries etching forgotten maps into it. A few birds, tiny, cheeky, possibly drunk, hop across its back and peck at something. The turtle doesn't care. At this point, not even time itself rushes it. The thing is, these turtles didn't just survive, they dominated. Long after their predators had choked on their own speed and vanished, the turtles just kept walking. Slowly. Across generations. Across epochs. You could say they won the race by never knowing there was one. By the way, fun fact, there's a species of jellyfish that can revert to its polyp stage and technically live forever. We're not saying turtles are jealous, but they've definitely filed a complaint with the evolutionary department. You kneel beside a trail, a shallow trench pressed into the jungle floor. It looks ancient. You reach out and touch the compacted soil. It's warm, not because of the sun, but because this trail's still in use. The same turtle who carved it 100 years ago might have just passed this way again last Tuesday. It's humbling. You move further inland, careful not to disturb the mossy boulders that might not be boulders. Every shape out here is suspiciously turtle-shaped, and then it hits you. You're the outsider. These creatures have passed laws in silence, drafted invisible borders, shaped the forest to their lumbering needs, all without a word. You're trespassing through a kingdom that doesn't recognize your species. You brush past a bush and find a half-buried eggshell. Huge, thick, cracked clean open. You lift it gently, it feels like porcelain. Some baby turtle, now possibly decades old, once fought its way out of this shell and crawled toward a moon that doesn't care who hatches tonight. There's a joke somewhere in here about modern humans being born with apps and these guys being born with armor. But you don't say it out loud. The moon's getting higher, the shadows thicken, and the sound of movement, slow, patient, ancient, never really goes away. It just circles watching. You're starting to suspect you're not the one studying them. You wake the next morning with your back stiff and your face full of sand. Not exactly five-star accommodations, but the local residents don't seem to mind. A low scraping noise carries across the humid air. It's not mechanical. It's not animal in any ordinary sense. It's the sound of age dragging itself forward. There's a giant tortoise standing in a clearing just ahead, well, not standing. That's not something tortoises do. More like waiting. Its head is craned out, beady eyes half-lidded as if it's perpetually unimpressed by your entire species. Which fair. You creep closer and realize this one's shell has moss growing on it. Full patches, a mini lawn, a tiny fern. You resist the urge to ask if it charges rent. Here's what's weird: when the predators vanished, the giants didn't. In fact, they flourished. Long after saber-toothed cats gave up and even after the monstrous megalania lizards were reduced to legends, these turtles just stayed. They didn't need to run. Their worst enemies were gone. That's the thing about islands. They forget what fear feels like. Isolated ecosystems like this one are time capsules. Cut off from evolving threats, creatures here didn't need new tricks, they just needed to last. And if you've got a body built like a tank, bones thick as guilt, and a digestive system that treats salad like a four-course meal, well, you last. Some paleontologists argue that without terrestrial predators, the selective pressure to stay small and quick just vanished. So over time, species that would have stayed bite-sized on the mainland ballooned into giants. Tortoises, rats, even pigeons. Yeah, there was once a pigeon taller than you. Dodo's cooler cousin. Still, it wasn't just size, it was attitude. These turtles didn't hide, they strutted. Slowly, with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing nothing wants to eat you. You see another tortoise a few paces away. Its shell is cracked not from violence but from time. Deep grooves like growth rings on an old tree. You kneel beside it, and for a brief awkward moment the turtle and you make eye contact. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't care. It knows what you are temporary. Historians still debate whether these island giants evolved this way post-isolation, or if they were already huge before arriving. Some claim they rafted in, literally clinging to floating vegetation and just drifting across oceans like slow-motion castaways. Others say they were brought by ancient humans. Both theories have gaps, probably because turtles don't leave good travel logs. You step over a patch of broken coral and into a patch of shade. The air changes, denser, older. It smells like sun-warmed bark and wet rock. And then you find it. Bones. Not a turtle, something else. Something that used to have teeth, a partial jaw. Thin, sharp, definitely carnivorous, but small, almost fox-sized. You hold it up to the light. The tooth sockets are elongated. Whatever it was, it probably went extinct centuries ago, possibly even millennia. But it tried. That's the thing. For every predator that made it to this island, none lasted. Disease, starvation, or sheer boredom. Hunting something that only moves 1 inch per second loses its thrill real quick. Odd fact: sloths. Yes, modern tree-hanging sloths used to be ground-dwelling giants too. Some were as big as elephants, and they also thrived on predator-free islands. Until humans showed up and ruined the vibe. Classic. You move inland again. The soil here is dark and springy underfoot. Somewhere above, a parrot screams profanities you probably deserve. Another turtle rests nearby, half submerged in a muddy pool. This one is tagged, a dull red marker fixed just above its rear leg. Someone else has been here. Recently. You're not alone in studying the slow. You sit and watch the turtle blink. Once, over the course of a full minute. Its eye closes halfway, pauses, then finishes. That's commitment. You exhale and lie back. The world here doesn't rush. It doesn't care about your schedule, your phone battery, or your calorie count. It moves at a pace that would drive a TikTok algorithm to madness. That's when you realize something truly terrifying. You might like it here. A lizard skitters past your head. You jolt. The turtle doesn't react, not even a blink. It has outlived hundreds of lizards. You will not be the most interesting thing it sees today. You lie in the shade of that ancient carapace, letting time stretch and sag. There's no hurry. Somewhere behind you, another turtle joins the clearing. It doesn't announce itself, doesn't ask for attention, it just is. On this island, that's enough. You wander deeper inland, the canopy closing in with a gentle hush. The sun filters down in ribbons, and each step you take kicks up the scent of damp roots and crushed lichen. Your feet crunch over a lattice of twigs, and somewhere above something hoots with suspicion. Probably an owl, possibly a ghost. You don't ask. Then you see it, a dome of stone rising from the earth. Except it's not stone, not really. It's a carapace fossilized in place, cracked like ancient pottery. This one's no longer alive. Hasn't been for centuries, maybe millennia. But here's the strange part, it's been carved. Fine grooves spiral across its surface, shallow but intentional. You brush the dirt away and reveal markings. Not scratches, not weathering. Symbols. Some you vaguely recognize: sun rays, crescent moons, the stick figure geometry of early navigators. Others totally alien, like someone tried to write the wind in cursive. Turns out, early humans weren't just hunters or settlers. They were opportunists. And when they arrived on these turtle-rich islands, they found more than meat. They found calendars. Some researchers believe that the deep rings on turtle shells, especially those of older giants, were used like living timekeepers. Each ring, a season. Each crack a clue. The same way we read trees now, ancient sailors may have read turtles. You imagine it, a canoe pulling up on this beach, salted men with tattoos squinting at a beast older than their entire clan. One leans in, fingers, the shell nods. Mating season soon. Another grunts. Storm coming. You chuckle. Primitive weather app. Historians still debate whether these marks were ceremonial or practical. Some say they were carved after death as part of burial rites. Others argue they were chiseled while the turtle still lived in a strange pact between beast and human wisdom for a little pain. You hear a rustle behind you. Another turtle, this one very much alive, trudges past with a huff that could either be irritation or indifference. It doesn't acknowledge you. You don't mind. Odd fact, the Galapagos Islands are named after their tortoises. Galapago was an old Spanish word for saddle because that's exactly what their shells looked like. Imagine a place being named after your back. Iconic. You follow the old turtle's trail until you find a ring of stones. At the center lies another shell, smaller, newer, unmarked. A sort of generational handoff, you guess. Maybe even a family grave. It's not clear. This island doesn't give up its meanings easily. You kneel beside it, feeling the warmth of the shell under the morning sun. The turtle within is asleep or pretending to be. You wonder what dreams look like when you're a creature that can live for 200 years. Probably slow, probably vivid, probably full of salad. Something stirs in the underbrush. You freeze. A bird hops out, a ridiculous stubby-legged thing with a beak too big for its face. It stares at you like you owe it money. Then it lets out a single horrendous squawk and flaps away. The turtle doesn't even twitch. That's the kind of calm you aspire to. As you sit there, you start noticing things. Patterns. Trails in the undergrowth. Places where the leaves have been parted, not trampled. Tiny prints that look like symbols repeating in the mud. Turtles aren't random. They follow ancestral paths, routes passed down like stories worn into the land like whispers. These are more than animals. They're archivists, and their shells time's first notebooks. A sudden breeze pushes through the canopy. It smells like salt. You follow it, and soon the trees part into a clearing with a panoramic view of the coastline. Below, waves nudge the shore with the rhythm of an old lullaby. In the sand, a group of turtles sun themselves, their shells catching the light like polished stone. You sit and watch. There's nothing else to do, and somehow it's perfect. One of the turtles turns its head toward you. Not quickly, but deliberately. Like it sees you not as an intruder, but as a blip. A moment. A passing echo. You nod, unsure why. It feels right. In the distance, a younger turtle climbs over driftwood, each movement a meditation. Its shell isn't marked yet. No calendars, no rituals, no guesses, just smooth possibility. You wonder who will read it one day. You're waist deep in a tidal pool now. The water murky with sand and algae warm, like bathwater that's been left out too long. Something brushes past your leg, not fast, not sharp, just heavy enough to make your heart leap and your dignity shrink. You freeze, breath caught, and then you see the culprit, a flipper. Massive, leathered, ancient. A marine turtle the size of a kayak glides beneath you like a dream half remembered. Its shell is streaked with barnacles, algae, and age. It's not afraid of you. It doesn't even notice you. You are, as always, background noise. You slip beneath the surface, eyes stinging with salt, and follow it. Down here, things blur. Your ears fill with the underwater silence, the kind that turns heartbeat into a bass drum. You blink, and the turtle blinks back. Its eye is glassy black, unreadable. And then in one sinuous motion, it dives deeper, much deeper. That's the trick, isn't it? Sea turtles outlived their oceanic predators not by outrunning them, but by outsinking them. When mosasaurs, megalodons, and all those prehistoric nightmares ruled the sea turtles learned to vanish beneath the light. Some species could stay submerged for hours, even days, using cloacal respiration. That's right, they breathe through their butts. Evolution's never boring. Historians still debate whether marine turtles evolved their deep-diving capacities as a defense mechanism or as a way to hunt slower prey along the seafloor. Either way, it worked. While teeth and speed ruled the upper oceans, the turtles crept beneath them, breathing slowly, moving rarely, waiting always. And you try not to blink as your lungs remind you that you in fact are not built for this. You break the surface with a gasping cough and drag yourself onto a flat rock shivering, even though the air is hot. The turtle is gone. Somewhere below, it's gliding past coral kingdoms and forgotten shipwrecks, completely uninterested in your struggles. Odd fact, some female sea turtles return to the exact beach where they were born to lay eggs, guided not by maps or stars, but by the Earth's magnetic field. They are, in a sense, swimming compasses, proof that nature doesn't need GPS if it has good instincts. You lie back on the stone and watch seabirds dive. They do it with elegance. You, in contrast, still have algae stuck to your armpit. One gull lets out a screech that sounds personal. Back on the beach, you notice something peculiar. A line in the sand traced not by wind or water, but by effort. A path thin and slow leading inland. You follow it. And there she is. A female turtle still wet from the sea, her shell steaming slightly in the sun, is inching forward. Her flippers scoop sand in deliberate rhythm. Her eyes are half shut as if she's dreaming through the motion. Nesting season. She's come to lay eggs, just like her mother did, and her mother before that. For hundreds, maybe thousands of generations, this pattern has repeated, unchanged, uninterrupted, until humans showed up. You watch as she digs the nest. It takes forever. You're sweating just from observing. She lays her eggs in silence, one by one, each a tiny gamble against time. Historians argue over just how far back this behavior goes. Some say marine turtles have been nesting on the same beaches for over 100 million years. That's longer than flowers have existed, longer than birds, longer than almost everything. But these beaches, they're changing. Plastic erosion, noise, pollution, things turtles can't comprehend but still feel. Some nights hatchlings emerge and head the wrong way, drawn inland by streetlights instead of moonlight. Confused, lost, eaten. Tonight, though, it's quiet, and she finishes without fanfare. She brushes sand back over the nest with her flippers, not even checking her work. Then she turns laborious and heavy and begins the slow return to the sea. You don't help. You don't interfere. You just watch. That's all you can do, really. She reaches the tide and pauses as a wave curls around her. The moon reflects on her shell like a borrowed memory. Then she disappears. You sit beside the freshly covered nest. There's no sign of what just happened, no marker, no monument, just sand, smooth and anonymous. But underneath a secret future. Tiny hearts beating in sync with the sea. You stand slowly, every joint protesting. The tide's coming in. You're already part of the island now. And the island, for better or worse, does not care. You wake before dawn to the sound of the island exhaling. Not wind, not waves. Just that hush that happens right before light. Like the world is holding its breath in anticipation of something very old and very slow waking up again. You climb a ridge, if you can call it that, really more of a lump of volcanic rock dressed in moss and vanity. At the top, you see the silhouette of a volcano. A real one. Slouched against the sky like a sleeping beast with one eye open. It hasn't erupted in 1,000 years, maybe more. But the rock remembers. It always remembers. This is where the turtles built their kingdom. Not that they meant to, of course. Turtles don't plan cities, but nature did it for them. When the volcano first erupted, it created layers of lava that cooled into jagged shelves and broken plains. Not friendly terrain, not even slightly, but perfect for keeping out anything too fast or too hungry. Historians still debate whether the first turtles came here by accident or intention. One theory suggests they drifted on floating mats of vegetation from a much larger continent. Another claims that early island chains formed stepping stone habitats over millions of years, allowing reptiles to slowly crawl from one safe zone to the next. Either way, they arrived, and once here, they stayed. The isolation meant no big cats, no wolves, no apex predators with claws and agendas, just quiet. And over time, that quiet became everything. Odd fact, some tortoises can survive months without food or water. Their metabolism is so slow that they can outlast droughts, famines, and even poor planning. Basically, they're the ultimate preppers without the YouTube channel. You descend into a hollow where the rock has warped into a bowl-shaped valley. Black basalt and twisted roots line the edges. And there, basking in the early sun, are 3 giant turtles, spaced like statues across the slope. Their shells look forged as if someone poured iron into molds shaped by patience. One of them stretches out its neck, yawning without sound. You can hear the faint creak of bone. Not pain, just age. And then it begins to move. You watch it clamber over rock that would break your ankle, its stubby limbs gripping with surprising precision. This terrain, impossible to cross with grace, has been reshaped by centuries of turtle migration. There are grooves in the stone where claws have worn trails, footpaths etched in volcanic glass by generations of trudging armor. You run your hand over one of the grooves. It's smooth, worn deep like a thumbprint left by time itself. The turtle keeps moving, indifferent to the homage. You sit on a boulder, legs dangling, and stare out over the valley. The sun is rising now, gold, slicing through low clouds, painting everything in warm light. You feel like you've stepped into a painting, one that took 1,000,000 years to finish. But this kingdom wasn't just built by geology, it was protected by it. Predators never got a foothold here because there was nowhere to chase. No open plains, no clean lines of attack, just rock thorns and slope. The turtles adapted. They didn't need speed, they needed traction. You spot one slowly hauling itself out of a depression in the earth. Its shell is chipped and stained with lichen. One eye seems clouded. Still, it moves with the purpose of a creature who's done this more times than there are stars visible from your city apartment. It takes nearly 20 minutes to travel 30 feet. You watch every second. You don't check your phone because there is no signal, and even if there were, you wouldn't. This moment is prehistoric, sacred, slow. A small lizard scurries past. The turtle doesn't blink. The volcano looms above, silent and full of stories. Beneath it, you begin to understand why the turtles lasted. Not in spite of slowness, but because of it. Fast things burn out. Fast things chase trends. Fast things die. But slow builds a kingdom no one can conquer. It takes you half this morning to find the path. Not because it's hidden, quite the opposite. It's massive, obvious, impossible to miss. It winds through the underbrush like a shallow trench wide enough for a wheelbarrow, but too irregular for anything human-made. You crouch beside it. The dirt is packed solid, pressed smooth by decades, maybe centuries of tread. It curves gently around trees that are now massive, whose roots must have been saplings when the first turtle passed through. The groove is worn into the very stone, in some places gouged out not by tools or erosion, but by footsteps. Well, flipper steps. The trail glints with crushed shell fragments and bits of volcanic glass. And at one point you swear you see a coin. You reach for it, nope, snail. Still alive. It waves at you slowly, passive-aggressively. These turtle paths aren't just random wanderings. They're migrations, ritual routes, and the island is laced with them. Tortoises have been walking the same lines here for longer than people have been drawing borders. They return to the same pools, the same sunning rocks, the same nesting valleys. Every generation adds just a little more wear to the trail, like soft hammers tapping history into the land. You follow one uphill, your boots slipping occasionally in the packed dust. It's humbling. These reptiles who lack maps, watches, and any real sense of urgency have navigated this exact trail for hundreds of years without once getting lost. You, meanwhile, had to walk back twice because you left your water bottle at that last rock. Historians still debate whether these pathways are guided purely by instinct or passed down through generations by subtle cues, scent vibration, or even social learning. There's even a theory that the turtles create faint, inaudible ground signals as they walk, like seismic breadcrumbs. The truth is, no one knows for sure, and the turtles aren't telling. You reach a clearing where the path forks into a lazy Y shape. Both branches curve away through tall grasses. At the junction, a turtle sits, not moving, just sitting, like a sentry or a librarian waiting for someone to check out a memory. You sit down across from it, unsure why. The turtle doesn't blink, doesn't even seem curious. You realize this might be its favorite thinking spot. You've intruded. Still, you're allowed to stay. For now. Odd fact, tortoises can feel through their shells. It's not just armor, it's living tissue. Their shells are fused to their spines, and rib cages and nerve endings run through the bone. So yes, when you touch their shell, they can feel it. Which makes you rethink every zoo encounter where someone tapped them like a table. The turtle in front of you shifts slightly, and you see a notch in its shell. Not natural. A carved triangle, smooth edge near the rear ridge. You lean closer. It's an old tag, possibly from a conservation study or maybe something older. You imagine an ancient mariner scratching it in with a sharpened bone, counting this one as part of a ledger. Shell number 38. You rise and follow the right-hand path, moving more slowly now. Respectfully. The island isn't yours, and the least you can do is pretend you're not just another bipedal tourist stomping through the past. The trail climbs again and opens onto a ledge overlooking a bowl-shaped depression in the terrain. There, scattered across the basin like sacred stones, are dozens of turtles, all sizes. Some moving, some sleeping, some locked in the eternal act of doing absolutely nothing and somehow still being majestic. This is the city. Not a city with walls, markets, or noise. but a gathering place, a hub. You can tell by the overlapping grooves in the earth, the parallel tracks, the scatter of empty nests and crushed fruit. This is where the turtles converge, and always have. You wonder how many human cities have lasted as long. How many have been visited every year without failure, without fanfare. These turtles have returned here for 1,000 generations and not one needed a memo. You crouch at the edge, watching one particularly old turtle, its shell blackened and cratered like cooled lava, shove its way through a thicket. It makes no noise, but every leaf it touches seems to nod. You smile and sit down. You're beginning to get it now. You're still sitting there when the humans arrive. No trumpets, no flags, just the soft splash of an oar and the creak of a boat's hull brushing against shore. You hear voices, first low, reverent, and exhausted, then footsteps. Bare feet, slow and unsure, padding over sand and stone as if asking permission from the ground itself. You peer through the undergrowth. There's a small group, maybe 6 or 7. Their skin is salt-worn, their hair bound up in cloth. One carries a carved staff, another a bundle wrapped in leaves. No one carries a weapon. That tells you something right away. They see the turtles and none of them move. Instead, they fall silent. One drops to their knees. Not dramatically, just the way someone would in the presence of something older, something sacred. You watch as the staff holder approaches a particularly massive tortoise, its shell wide enough to seat 2 adults, and places the staff gently beside it. A kind of offering. This is no hunting party. This is a pilgrimage. Historians still debate whether these early seafarers came here for survival or for ceremony. Some island oral histories describe the stonebacks as messengers from the sea god creatures that remembered storms, famines, and which plants not to eat. Other versions say the turtles were once men who stayed too long in the salt and were changed. You've probably stayed too long in the salt yourself, but no shell yet. The group sits in a circle around the turtles, speaking softly in a language you don't recognize but can almost feel in your chest. The turtle doesn't react. It's probably heard everything before. Odd fact, tortoises can recognize individual humans and even learn simple tasks when properly motivated, usually by food. But in this case, the only reward being offered is respect. One of the visitors stands and unwraps the bundle. Inside are fruits round yellow and bruised from travel. She places them near a turtle's mouth and waits. Eventually, the turtle shifts, takes a bite. The entire group exhales together as if this slow-motion nibble were a divine blessing. You're witnessing something older than written language interspecies, communication by patience. And still, you've got questions. Why come all this way for a creature that doesn't speak, that doesn't trade or fight or build? Because maybe these turtles did something else. Something more human than we give them credit for. They remembered. Not the way you remember birthdays or passwords, but the way stone remembers pressure. The way wind remembers the shape of cliffs. These turtles knew the island before maps. They knew the moon when it was brighter, and the humans in their own quiet way knew that. You slip closer, careful not to crack a twig. The pilgrims begin to sing. No melody, just a droning harmony layered like the tide, simple and long. One by one, the turtles move. Not quickly, but in time with the rhythm. And it's not obedience, it's recognition. This has happened before. You sit behind a tree listening. Watching. One of the visitors stands and lifts her arms skyward, her wrists inked with spirals that mimic the grooves in a turtle's shell. She says a name, maybe hers, maybe someone else's, and presses her palms to the shell of a resting tortoise. The moment is longer than it needs to be. Then it passes. The group gathers their things, offers no farewells, and returns the way they came. You don't follow them. You don't need to. They came here to witness the same thing you've been watching this whole time, the continuation of something slow and immortal. Something that doesn't ask for anything except space, silence, and sunlight. As they disappear over the ridge, you approach the turtle left behind. Its shell bears carvings not fresh but old, very old. Faint outlines of stars, fish, and what looks like a canoe. This turtle has been touched by many hands, and yet it sits as if untouched. You run a hand along its shell. You don't know if you're allowed to, but it doesn't flinch. You whisper something, not a prayer, just a promise to remember, to carry this moment home. The turtle does not respond. It doesn't need to. You don't sleep that night. Not because you're scared, though. Let's be honest. There's something about a jungle that sounds like it's whispering directly into your ear, even when it's supposed to be quiet. No, you stay awake because the sky is clear. And when the stars come out over this island, they don't just twinkle, they stare. You're lying beside the nesting site from before, the same patch of sand where the mother turtle labored hours to bury her soft-shelled legacy. The surface is smooth now, still, but you can feel something shifting underneath. And then movement. The sand twitches. Just once, then again. Then, like bubbles breaking a pond's surface, it crumbles inward. A nose pokes through. Then a flipper. And then with a soft pop, the first hatchling emerges. You hold your breath. It's not alone. Soon the sand ripples with tiny struggles. 30, maybe 40 miniature turtles bursting into a world they're already late for. They wriggle in unison, scrambling over one another with frantic, clumsy energy. You'd call it adorable if it weren't so quietly desperate. Because here's the catch, they're not safe yet. They're never safe. Statistically, most of these hatchlings won't make it. A few will be eaten by gulls, others by crabs, some by dehydration, many by rats, the invasive kind brought here centuries ago by ships that also carried salt tools and careless hunger. You spot one rat now beady-eyed and silent, crouched at the tree line, watching. The hatchlings haven't seen it yet. You want to help? Of course you do. But you pause. This is not your moment. This is theirs. Historians still debate whether humans introduced these threats accidentally or willfully ignored the risks in favor of convenience. Some accounts from early explorers mention lighting fires near nesting beaches to cook eggs stolen from turtle nests. Others claim the rats were a complete surprise, multiplying faster than anyone expected. The result: the collapse of an age-old ritual. You watch as the rat scurries forward. 2 steps, then 3, but suddenly it stops. A shadow falls across it. One of the adult turtles, silent until now, is blocking the path. It's not aggressive, just there. Big, unbothered, unyielding. The rat hesitates, recalculates, retreats. You don't cheer, but you grin like a man who just saw karma roll in with a shell and a "don't mess with me" attitude. The hatchlings reach the tide. They hesitate for a heartbeat, then plunge into the surf, tiny limbs flailing against waves that don't care. But they go. Every single one. Odd fact, hatchlings use the angle of the moonlight reflected on the water to find their way to the sea. In places where artificial lights outshine the moon, they often go the wrong way towards streets, walls, or predators. Entire generations have been lost to the glow of vacation condos. Tonight, though, the moon wins. You wade into the water up to your knees, scanning the surface for bobbing heads. But they vanish just like that, into the deep, into the dark. You wonder how many of them will return. 1 in 1,000, maybe. 2 if the odds are kind. But that's all it takes to keep the ritual alive. Just one survivor. One memory that swims back years later, ready to dig a hole of its own. Behind you, the adult turtle turns and slowly retreats into the brush. Not fast, not flashy, just done. And you stay in the surf a little longer. Let the waves wrap around your ankles. For the first time, you feel like maybe you arrived on this island exactly when you were supposed to. You wake with your back against a tree and the vague sensation that something has gone terribly wrong with your spine. Apparently, turtle posture is not transferable to humans. Your neck cracks when you look to the side. That's fine. You're among elders here. Crepitus is practically a greeting. The sun is already high and the forest smells like warmed sap and salt air. You stretch, shuffle to your feet, and begin down a winding trail that unsurprisingly was not made for bipeds. It forces you to crouch sidestep and occasionally mutter curses that sound oddly respectful when whispered among ferns. And then, in a small clearing, you find them. Humans, again. But these are not pilgrims. No carved staffs, no bundles of fruit wrapped in woven leaves. These folks are wearing shorts and GoPros and sunglasses too reflective to trust. You freeze half-concealed behind a tree watching. There are 4 of them crouched around a pair of nesting pits. Empty now. Just craters in the sand. One of the men pokes at the edge with a stick, grunting something about not deep enough. Another chuckles. You catch the phrase, wouldn't even feed a dog. Something curdles in your gut. These are turtle hunters, not poachers in the cinematic sense, no rifles or machetes or secretive jungle deals. Just men who grew up hearing stories from their grandfathers about how turtle meat makes you strong, how turtle blood cures fever, how turtle shells can keep spirits away if you hang them above your bed. Old traditions, repackaged with modern apathy. Historians still debate how much damage traditional hunting actually did to turtle populations. Some insist it was sustainable, ritualized, seasonal, respectful. Others point to sharp population crashes and entire islands where the turtles vanished within decades of human arrival. Either way, the shift from reverence to routine consumption was enough to tip the balance. You watch as one of the men lights a cigarette and tosses the match into the pit. It flares, catches on dry leaf litter. He laughs. No one stops him. The turtles don't come near. They know better. Odd fact, the Aldabra giant tortoise can sleep for up to 18 hours a day and live without food for a year. It's a lifestyle choice some of us would envy if only it weren't so frequently interrupted by machete-wielding opportunists. You don't intervene. Not yet. Instead, you trail them quietly as they move deeper into the island. Their conversation is loud, careless, the opposite of everything the turtles represent. Then you hear a new sound. Drums, not loud ones. Not war drums or celebrations. Just a quiet, pulsing rhythm in the distance, like a heartbeat amplified by wood. You follow it. The turtle hunters hear it too. They fall quiet for the first time. One mutters something about the turtle dance. Another snorts. Locals and their lizard worship. They don't understand what's coming. You reach a higher ridge and look down. At the edge of a wide clearing, a small group of elders, barefoot wrapped in simple cloth, move in a slow circle. They mimic turtle movements. Shoulders hunched, heads dipping, low arms sweeping like flippers. It looks awkward, a little funny, even until you watch long enough for the rhythm to settle in your bones. These aren't performers. They're remembering. One of the hunters scoffs. The others lose interest. One slinks off toward the beach, probably hoping to find a nest worth raiding. The rest follow bored and unimpressed. You stay, because something in that dance speaks to you. The slow swaying, the weight of each step, the patience. These people aren't just honoring turtles, they're becoming them if only for a little while. You step back slowly until you're out of sight again. Not because you feel guilty, but because you feel reverent and a little stiff. Turns out walking like a turtle, not a great long-term strategy for the human spine. Still, the movement stays with you as you wander off toward the far side of the island. Your feet slower now, your gaze lower. Not rushing, trying it on, just to see what it feels like. By now, the island has slowed you down. Not just your walking, your breathing, your thinking. Even your inner monologue, which normally zips along like a squirrel with an espresso addiction, now murmurs in measured syllables. You've begun measuring time in turtle units. 1 turtle minute equals however long it takes to decide whether or not to move. Most things don't require a second turtle minute. You find yourself in a narrow ravine where the roots from above hang like braided ropes. A turtle is halfway up the slope, paused between 2 decisions: forward or nap. You wait, assuming this is going to be a long negotiation. Then something changes. From the corner of your eye, you catch movement, fast, sharp, wrong. A flash of fur and teeth. A dog. Not wild, not native, just loose. It lunges toward the turtle with the reckless confidence of a predator that's never known a real challenge. It snarls, digs at the ground, tries to wedge its nose under the shell. The turtle withdraws into itself with that slow, sorrowful grace that makes you feel like you're watching someone fold in shame. You shout before you think. You throw a rock. It misses, obviously. You don't have aim, you have enthusiasm, but the dog hesitates. Snarls again, then bolts when it sees you coming full tilt. Arms flailing, voice cracking somewhere between, "Go away, and I will call your mother." The turtle stays motionless. You kneel beside it, chest heaving. Here it is, slow versus fast, the ancient war. Historians still debate how much impact introduced predators had on turtle decline, especially dogs and pigs. Some argue it wasn't the animals themselves, but the ecosystem unraveling around them. Eggs trampled, nests raided, rituals disturbed. Others point directly at sharp-toothed descendants of domestic pets. You don't need a footnote. You just saw it happen. Odd fact, a tortoise's primary defense is not its shell. It's the ability to outlive every single thing that tries to eat it. If patience were a weapon, these creatures would be apex predators. You sit beside the turtle for a while. It doesn't come out. Eventually, you get up and keep walking. Further inland, the jungle thins. You find a clearing littered with broken shells, not from hatching, from cracking. You know what this is. Old hunting grounds. Someone or something used to bring turtles here, flip them, split them, and leave the remains. Some shells are ancient, moss-covered. Others feel recent, still dusted with ash. You crouch beside one that's split neatly down the center. It looks almost surgical. You wonder if the last thing it heard was the echo of its own breath bouncing off the rock walls around you. This isn't just a battle of species. It's a battle of values. Of speed versus stillness, of hunger versus ritual, and sometimes speed wins. But not always. You walk deeper until you find a hill made entirely of stone shaped like a turtle shell. At the top, a small circle of stones surrounds a single carved stake, its top smoothed by weather, maybe once bearing feathers or cloth. A turtle trail leads to the base of the hill and nowhere else. This is a tomb. Someone a long time ago decided that a turtle deserved a monument. You sit beside the stake and look out. The trees roll away in soft waves. Beyond them, the sea glitters like spilled mercury. Below, something moves. A turtle, massive, old, and limping, pushes its way through the underbrush. One of its legs drags. Scar tissue clings to the side of its shell. But it keeps moving, slow, relentless. You watch as it climbs the slope beneath you, heading straight toward the grave. It pauses at the top, then rests its head against the stone. You don't move. You don't breathe. This is not your moment. This is theirs. The turtle lingers at the stone for hours. Long after the sun has shifted, long after the breeze has picked up, and the forest has started its low whispering again. You stay nearby quiet, not because you're afraid of breaking the moment, but because you genuinely don't know what this moment is. It could be instinct, it could be coincidence, but it looks a lot like grief. Eventually, the turtle shifts. One long exhale like sand sliding down a dune. Then it turns slowly as always and begins the return trek down the hill. You don't follow it. Some journeys don't need witnesses twice. You loop back toward the coastline, legs heavy, brain heavier. You've seen enough now to understand why some people who came to these islands never left, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to return to a world that refuses to be still. And speaking of people, you hear one before you see him, a low voice thick with age and a little regret talking to someone or something you can't see yet. You push through the brush and find him sitting on a rock, feet bare, a long stick resting across his lap. At first, you think he's talking to himself. Then you notice the turtle. It's huge, old, probably the same one you saw by the tomb. It's sitting just a few feet from him, unmoving except for the occasional blink. The man is telling it a story. Something about a storm. About a boy who caught a turtle, kept it in a basket, fed it mangoes, gave it a name, and then sold it for a bag of rice, a box of salt, 2 packets of cigarettes. The man exhales, wipes his eyes with the back of his hand, and smiles in a way that cracks his whole face open. I never forgot that turtle, he says. I saw its eyes again last night. Could have sworn it was you. He pats the stick across his knees, but I know it wasn't. You're smarter than me. You didn't come back. The turtle doesn't respond. Of course not. But it stays. That feels like enough. You sit nearby, not interrupting. He doesn't mind. Historians still debate how often ancient turtle hunters bonded with their prey. In some cultures, turtles were both sacred and sacrificial creatures you honored even as you consumed them. You whispered apologies, burned herbs, sang songs to the shell. But in other places, they were just meat. And memory has trouble forgiving itself when it smells like smoke. Odd fact in Seychelles, there was once a tortoise named Adwaita who allegedly lived to 255 years old. That means it could have hatched while Beethoven was still composing and died in the same decade as the iPhone 6. No turtle should ever outlive its own predators and the people who protected it. But some do. The old man turns to you finally. You here to study them, he asks. You nod, then shake your head, then shrug. I think I came to listen. He chuckles deep and gravelly. That's a better reason than most. He tells you more. About his youth. About how his grandfather showed him the best nesting beaches. About the first time he saw a hatchling crawl into the sea and how it changed something in his bones. But I hunted, he says. We all did. That's the part people like to leave out. You don't judge him. You wouldn't dare. Not when he's clearly judged himself every morning for the last 50 years. Now? Though he protects them, walks the beaches at night, fills in false nests to confuse poachers, sometimes even sings the old songs just in case the turtles remember. You help him walk back to his camp, really just a tarp and a pot. He waves you off, says he's fine. And maybe he is. Before you go, he calls out, tell people slow things still matter. You nod. You will. And as you walk away, you realize you already have. You head inland again this time, climbing a narrow ravine flanked by jagged stone and draping vines. The air thickens as you rise, less salt, more fern, more memory. The kind of silence you're in now isn't just peaceful, it's deliberate. The island seems to be holding its breath for something. Then the slope levels out and suddenly you're staring into the heart of it. A valley. But not just any valley, a secret one. Shielded on all sides by cliffs and thick canopy, it feels untouched. Not wild exactly. Older than wild. Pre-wild. Like something the rest of the island grew around, protecting it like a seed in a locked box. You ease your way down through the undergrowth and pause halfway when your eyes adjust. Turtles. Dozens of them. They're smaller than the giants you've been trailing. Their shells darker, smoother. Some are young, maybe hatchlings, only a few years old. Others are adolescents, still soft at the edges, still growing into their weight. And nestled among them, two titans, big enough to block sunlight if they moved at the right angle. You step carefully now. The air here isn't thick, it's sacred. You know enough to tell the difference. This valley wasn't on any map. It wasn't mentioned in the stories. Even the old man never spoke of it. Which makes sense. Some things aren't shared. Some things survive by hiding. Historians still debate whether isolated pockets like this represent lost populations or if they're simply overlooked. In conservation circles, they call it a refugium, a place where a species outlives its odds, where the world forgets to kill them. This valley is a refugium. You move among them quiet and wide-eyed. One turtle raises its head as you pass, gives you the look of a librarian catching you near the rare books section. You bow, slightly unsure whether it's the right thing to do, but it feels earned. There are signs of old human presence here, not destructive, just careful. A circle of stones, now half buried in moss. A few carved poles leaned against a boulder, their meanings long faded. You brush your hand over one and feel the faint groove of an etching, a spiral pattern barely there. Like someone tried to draw a storm and then decided it was better not to explain it. You find a rock near the center of the valley and sit. Not to study, not to record, just to be. The turtles move like living weather. One hauls itself through a trickling stream. Another basks in a patch of light so still it looks sculpted. Odd fact, turtles can sleep underwater for up to 5 hours without surfacing. They slow their heart rates to almost nothing, letting the ocean cradle them into the quietest version of life. Here, you imagine they could sleep for centuries. And maybe some of them have. One turtle shell notched and pitted crawls close. You see a pattern of scars across its front leg. 3 long arcs like a failed attempt at capture, probably decades old. It survived something, maybe many somethings. You reach out slowly. It doesn't pull away. Instead, it shifts slightly and continues past you unconcerned. You've been accepted, not as an equal, never that, but as something other than a threat. You spend the afternoon in the valley watching. The kind of watching that slows your pulse. The kind that unknots thoughts you didn't know were tangled. Nothing dramatic happens, which is what makes it remarkable. No one fights, no one rushes, no one performs. They simply are. And that somehow is everything. The sun begins to dip and the valley softens with shadow. You don't want to leave, but you know you can't stay. As you climb out, you glance back one last time. The turtles haven't moved much, but they don't need to. They're exactly where they were meant to be, and somehow so were you. You return to the shore under a sky bleeding orange. The sea has pulled back for now, revealing long streaks of tide-worn rock and pools where fish blink at you like surprised neighbors. You're thinking about silence, about patience, about how the turtles live in a different kind of time. Then you see it. Half buried in the sand, just beyond a crumpled stretch of driftwood is a shell, not recent, not occupied, cracked and dry like forgotten pottery. You kneel beside it, brushing away sand, and realize this one's different. It's been carved. Not just marked, but truly carved. Spirals, geometric bands, and oddly what looks like a ship. A real ship. Mast sail oars. Not stylized or mythic. Accurate, almost like a sketch. The hair on your arms rises. You've seen no evidence of that level of craftsmanship from anyone on the island today. This isn't modern. This isn't for tourists. You run your fingers along the edge of the design. There's weathering, yes, but the grooves are deliberate. Human. Meaningful. It wasn't done with a pocket knife. It was etched with purpose. And there's more. On the back ridge of the shell, faint but unmistakable, are markings you can't decipher. Symbols in a language no longer spoken. Almost as if the turtle had been turned into a journal or a warning. Historians still debate whether such shells are genuine artifacts or romanticized fakes left behind by early explorers. But some archaeologists, especially those who've studied Polynesian or Micronesian sea navigation, believe these carvings point to a lost seafaring culture. One that recorded routes not on paper but on living maps that could walk across islands. Odd fact, some ancient Pacific Island navigators used stick charts, made from palm ribs and shells to map ocean swells and wave refraction. It's possible this was a similar approach, but even more durable, more alive. You sit beside the shell, heart racing in that quiet, awestruck way that only discovery can bring. There's no plaque, no spotlight, just a story buried in sand and time. A crab pokes out from beneath the rim of the shell. Looks at you like you're interrupting something sacred. You apologize because, frankly, you probably are. The ocean murmurs and you look up to see another turtle hauling itself from the water, slow, glistening, determined. It stops when it sees you, blinks, then trudges forward anyway. You're not important enough to be an obstacle. The turtle passes within inches, and in that moment you get it. This isn't just a species, it's a message. Survival is memory. Patience is language. The shell is not just armor, it's archives. The sun lowers behind you and the light across the shell turns gold, then violet, then nearly black. You don't take a picture, you don't need one. This image will live in the slow parts of your mind, now the ones the turtles have been gently rewiring. You bury the shell again carefully, respectfully before you leave. Not because you want to hide it, but because you understand now. Some stories aren't meant to be displayed. They're meant to be found. You leave the shore behind the last hints of daylight, curling away into darkness like pages turning in a wind you can't quite feel. The jungle swells around you once more, deep greens turned silver by moonlight, and sounds that echo like old secrets remembered in the wrong language. You're heading for higher ground now, not because anyone told you to, just because your legs seem to know the way. The pack on your back is heavier than it was when you arrived. Not with gear, just with meaning. You're carrying images now, symbols, that carved shell, the valley, the hatchlings, the old man's voice cracking over memory. But most of all, you're carrying the turtles, not literally. That would be exhausting. Still, they're with you. The trail is narrow, lined with moss-covered roots, and the occasional bat that flutters by with zero respect for personal space. Up ahead, the jungle thins and you emerge onto a bluff that overlooks the island's southern edge. There's someone else already there. 3 people actually kneeling, surrounded by open boxes filled with strange equipment. One clicks a device, another scribbles notes by red flashlight, and the third, she's crouched beside a turtle, strapping a small transmitter gently onto the rear of its shell. Tagging, tracking, studying. You approach quietly. The man with the flashlight looks up, startled for a second, then relaxes. "Don't worry," he says. "We're not hurting her." "I know," you reply, and you do. They're researchers, modern ones. The kind who camp for weeks, collect data, wear the same sun-stained shirt until the ocean asks for it back. The woman taps the shell once gently. The turtle doesn't flinch. She smiles. This one's headed for another island, maybe even open sea. "How do you know?" you ask. She gestures toward a tablet lit with glowing lines. "They've got favorite routes. Been using them for generations." Even after everything that's changed, historians still debate whether these movements are instinctual or learned. Some argue it's all magnetism and inherited rhythms. Others believe it's cultural, that turtles learn from their surroundings and respond to ancestral memory the way birds inherit flight paths. You watch the lines, each one a trail in motion, snaking across the archipelago like threads in a loom. Patterns begin to form. Shapes. "Look at this," the man says, zooming out. "What you see isn't random." The turtles aren't just wandering, they're weaving. A slow, deliberate map across hundreds of miles. You glance at the turtle, now freed from tagging. She pauses for a beat, then turns toward the sea and begins her descent. You follow just far enough to see her silhouette vanish into moonlit surf. Odd fact, sea turtles often sleep in underwater rock ledges or coral outcrops to keep from drifting, anchoring themselves as they dream. That means somewhere out there beneath 1,000 miles of indifferent sea turtles are tucked in like stones wrapped in memory. You sit on the sand again, this time knowing exactly how long to wait. Sure enough, the stars shift. A hatchling appears from the dunes behind you, then 2, then 10. They tumble toward the sea, frantic and unstoppable. This time you walk beside them, not interfering, just accompanying. Because sometimes hope looks like a line of small things marching toward vastness. And sometimes your job is simply to carry the torch a few steps farther. You stay until the last shell disappears. Then you lie back and let the earth press gently against your spine. You don't sleep. You remember. Morning returns quietly. No blaring sunrise. Just a soft lifting of shadows, as if the island is gently peeling the night away like an old layer of skin. You wake on the sand with the outline of a turtle shell printed into your back. Fitting. You sit up slowly, joints clicking in protest, and look around one last time. The tide is low again. The tracks from the night's hatchlings are already vanishing, brushed away by breeze and bird feet. No record, no headline. Just the memory of movement across silence. But your attention is pulled elsewhere. A small hill near the edge of the forest catches the sun just right, and you realize it's not a hill. It's another turtle, shell mottled with age, head resting in the crook of 2 roots. Not asleep, Not dead, just still. Waiting. You walk over slow and quiet and sit beside it. The shell bears carvings, too. Not as decorative as the ones near the coast, these are more utilitarian. Grid-like. Linear. Someone once tracked something here. Tides, perhaps. Migrations. Maybe even the stars. You reach into your bag and pull out a small notebook, one of the few things you brought. You hadn't written much in it, but now you do. You sketch the shell. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's real. Because someone else will find this someday and wonder what you saw, and maybe they'll understand just a little more. You write a single line beneath the drawing. The tide forgets, but the shell remembers. Historians still debate whether turtles possess true memory. Whether they know the past or merely respond to instinct dressed in time's clothing. But at this point, you don't really care. You've seen enough to know there's something sacred in the way they return again and again, never faster, never late. Odd fact, turtles are among the very few reptiles whose hearts adjust rate depending on oxygen availability, slowing to near stillness when submerged, preserving energy like treasure. Even their hearts know how to wait. And you've learned to wait too. You stand up and look around. This isn't goodbye, not really, because the turtles don't leave. They carry everything with them. Their home, their stories, their scars, their time. You touch the shell one last time. It's warm, solid, alive, and without looking back, you begin the slow walk down toward the beach. There's no fanfare, no music, no closure. Just the hush of waves and the crunch of your feet through sand. And then, on the horizon, you spot a single hatchling. Alone. Late. Struggling over a ridge of seaweed. You jog to meet it, dropping to your knees as it wiggles forward. You don't pick it up, you let it find its own way. But you walk beside it. One more time. It reaches the edge of the sea and pauses. The wave crashes over it. And when the water recedes, the hatchling is gone. You stay there for a long time staring at the spot where it vanished. And in that blur of foam and salt and heartbeat, you believe it'll make it. Maybe not because the world is kind, but because the turtle is